Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is our 139th episode on March 16th, 2023. My name is Andy Zee. I'm the host of the show, coming to you from Los Angeles, California.
And my name is Sunsara Taylor. I'm the co-host of the Revolution Nothing Less show. Welcome.
A watchword of this show is that humanity here and all over the world does not have to live this way. A better, radically different world and society is possible, and there is a roadmap to get to that world and a concrete vision of what that world could be. This is a show about and for a real revolution, for the emancipation of humanity here and all over the world. We stand at a moment in history when the future hangs in the balance. Not only the existential crisis of war, world nuclear war threatening, there is also an extremely short time to try to reverse the destruction of the climate, which is cascading towards a situation where human life as we know it stands on the brink of devastating catastrophe, if not extinction. A time when all the forms of exploitation, inequality, oppression are reaching epidemic, horrific proportion. Yet, this is also a time when revolution to overthrow the existing system is becoming more possible because of how the workings of this putrid, outmoded capitalist imperialist system is shaking the foundations of people's very lives, and in this country, it has given rise to a deep divide among those who rule and all through the society. We have said that this crisis and the deep divisions in society now can only be resolved through radical means of one kind or another. Either radically reactionary, murderously oppressive and destructive means, or radically emancipatory, revolutionary means. But let us not talk falsely. Right now, the world is careening towards that first terrible future, but there is another way. And that is what the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show brings, the foundation and the roadmap for a real revolution to emancipate humanity in this time exists. It is concentrated in something terrible or something truly emancipating, a path-breaking work by the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, whose work and whose leadership we bring you on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show.
Bob Avakian is a leader who came out of the revolutionary 1960s, who bases himself on the scientific understanding that this system must be finally overthrown through an organized struggle involving millions of people and replaced with a system that is oriented to and capable of meeting the most fundamental needs of humanity and enabling humanity to become fit caretakers of the earth. Bob Avakian has also written a constitution for the new socialist republic in North America, a sweeping vision and a concrete blueprint for the new socialist society, whose fundamental goal is to bring about a world without class distinctions and without classes at all, a world without exploitation and oppression, and without the destructive divisions and antagonisms among the people, a communist world. Bob Avakian is actively leading the struggle to make a revolution now with all the heart and soul and the deeply forged scientific understanding he has developed over decades. And you will get to meet him and learn from some of his insights in today's show and the excerpts of the interviews from this show that Andy and I did with him last fall.
With the stakes and the possibilities, as we have just briefly said here, it is time to get to work to put revolution on the map. It is a time for truth-telling, a time not to mince words, a time to cut the bullshit and to get to work to build a movement for a real revolution now.
The Revcoms are beginning a spring revolutionary offensive against all the shit of this system and all the bullshit that defends this system, that leads people to accept what must not be accepted, or to look for their little piece of the pie within this system that rests on the exploitation and oppression of humanity here and all over the world. So to get into this, in today's show, we have 3 segments. At the end of the show, we're going to bring you a report on the first revolutionary foray of this spring offensive, a report on International Women's Day this past week. In the middle of the show, we're going to take on the looming danger, intensifying danger of inter-imperialist warfare breaking out of what is now a proxy war between the U.S. and NATO on the one side and Russia on the other in Ukraine, and the stakes for humanity and what the Revcoms are going to be initiating against this. And we're going to start the show today with a segment announcing a new offensive, taking on the woke lunacy and identity politics bullshit and contrasting it up against the revolution that humanity so urgently needs.
All right, so you're going to be doing that first segment with Rafael Kadaris, and let's just go right to it.
Right now, the rulers of this country are sharply divided, and society is increasingly ripping apart. Norms and fundamental rights that were long assumed to be permanent are being shredded before our eyes. The commitment by the rulers to the peaceful transfer of power, that's gone. Women's fundamental right to abortion, gone as well.
There is no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion.
The Supreme Court has essentially reshaped American life.
Everywhere you look, fascist politicians and mobs are on the march.
How many parents want their kindergartners to have transgenderism or something injected into classroom instruction?
Yet among the decent people, there is way too much ignoring this growing nightmare and turning away from the fight that must be waged. And this is all the more criminal because this is a time not only of heightened dangers, but because precisely due to how profound this crisis is and how deeply it is going to cause people to question things that they've normally unthinkingly accepted, there is a heightened possibility to wrench something truly emancipating out of this situation. A real revolution that overthrows the system that is the source of so much misery and oppression all over the world and replaces it with a liberating system on the road to real emancipation. And one of the most widespread, one of the most harmful ways that people are turning away from or being turned away from the fight that must be waged is the growing influence of and the intimidation caused by woke idiocy and woke identity politics. So I am very happy to be joined here in studio today by Rafael Kadaris, a member of the RNL team, to announce that we are launching a new effort to take on this woke idiocy here on this show and out in the world.
Yeah, this is so important because look, the climate of our planet is being destroyed. The US imperialists are moving closer to war with Russia and China. The fascists are advancing. And what's happening on the college campuses, which should be hotbeds of resistance and revolution? And what are all too many of the woke students and intellectuals focused on? Changing words and changing labels on reality, rather than changing reality itself and fighting to end very real oppression. For example, the University of Southern California School of Social Work recently announced that they will no longer use the term field, as in field work or going into the field, because of its connotations with slavery and because it might upset students. Earth to USC, there are lots of fields in the world. By this logic, we should stop saying summer camp because Jewish students might be reminded of concentration camps. But this is the kind of woke lunacy that's all too prevalent on college campuses and beyond. It treats students like they're fragile babies. And it's low-hanging fruit for the fascists at Fox News to ridicule and to use it to deny the existence of actual racist oppression and undermine real struggles against it. And along with this, we have the identity politics police dictating who has a right to speak. And if you haven't experienced something directly, you should just shut up and check your privilege and stay in your lane. For example, a law school in Vermont covered up and is trying to destroy a mural depicting and condemning the brutality of slavery and upholding the abolitionist movement. You might be wondering, was this inspired by Ron DeSantis and the fascist campaign to erase Black history? No. It was woke students and school administrators trying to whitewash the mural, in essence, because the artist is white. One student actually said the artist was depicting history, but it's not his history to depict. Think about the logic of this and where it leads if artists are only allowed to depict their own experience or their own identity group. No more fiction, no more acting, no more imagination. Plus, the history being depicted in these murals is an objective fact, which anyone can learn about and needs to learn about. But in the eyes of these woke identity politics hustlers, oppression becomes something to be owned rather than something to be exposed and fought against by everyone so that it can be ended. As Bob Avakian put it,
this wokeness, with its evading of and diversion from the real struggle that needs to be waged, and its substituting of word changing and cancel culture in place of this struggle, is actually contributing to and furthering this nightmare.
In the coming weeks, we'll be dissecting the whole framework of woke identity politics, the anti-scientific philosophy behind it that denies objective reality, the political program of trying to get inclusion and safe spaces within this oppressive capitalist imperialist system, the way it targets people with a little more privilege but never targets the system itself, and why all this is not just wrong but extremely harmful to the struggle for a better world. We're going to be taking this on in a big way here on the RNL show and on college campuses, and we'll be sharing more about this soon. Today, we're going to be playing a clip from the Bob Avakian interviews on this. But first, we wanted to talk about an experience that Sunsara and I had recently at a university in California where you gave a couple presentations in the lead up to International Women's Day. At one of these events, some students objected to the slogan, "Unleash the fury of women as a mighty force for revolution," basically saying, who are you to say that women's fury should be directed towards revolution? Isn't that a way of co-opting women's fury and denying their agency?
Yeah, this did come up from quite a few of the students. And the first and most important thing, and this is a point that's going to be emphasized in the segment we play from Bob Avakian in a few minutes from the interviews he did on this show, the most important thing to start with is what is objectively true about reality. What is objectively the source of women's oppression? And what objectively can lead us to ending it? And that's a question of science, of scientifically examining reality. It's not a question of who's being centered or who has agency. And a scientific analysis of reality will reveal that the patriarchal oppression of women and all oppression based on gender and sexual orientation is built into this system of capitalism, imperialism. And unless and until we overthrow this system and construct a radically different system, a different economic system, social system, legal system, culture, unless and until we do that, we can't really go to work fully on digging up and overcoming thousands of years of oppression and degradation that women have faced. Again, that's a question of science. And the fury of women does need to be directed towards this system that is the source of their fury. That's not co-opting their fury. In fact, it's betraying women and their fundamental interest and urgent need to have an end to their oppression, not to struggle with them to direct it there and to just tail after their fury wherever it might be directed at any given time. I mean, think about all the Christian fascist women who were furious about the so-called killing of babies and played a very big role in the movement that recently overturned women's right to abortion and is causing hell right now for millions of women across this country with worse to come. They were furious. Should we follow them because they're furious? What about their agency? No, I don't think so. Again, it's a question of science and what is the source of this oppression and how do we end it? Or you take a more positive phenomenon like Me Too, and we talked about this with the students. Me Too opened the floodgates of righteous rage of women against sexual assault and harassment. It was very important. Sexual assault and even rape grow out of this system, out of the functioning of this system and how it shapes and molds men and boys. It is really important that this struggle and this fury be unleashed against this in its own right, and that this increasingly be part of a movement for an actual revolution aimed at digging up the system and the soil that gives rise to this. But at the same time, there were other trends within Me Too, we have to be honest, that worked against this, that went in the opposite direction, that got fixated on tearing down individual men or canceling them rather than going after this system and the patriarchal oppression and culture it gives rise to. There were trends of throwing out due process or the presumption of innocence, of starting to treat every accusation as if it was the same as confirmation of guilt. There were trends of revenge against men. Look, I understand how women could become so furious that they say, I don't care if some innocent men suffer. We've been suffering for millennia. Who cares? I understand that fury, but I also know that will not lead to emancipating women or anybody else, and it will do great harm. And so I not only am willing to, but I feel a responsibility to, and we should all feel a responsibility to struggle over where this fury needs to be directed. Again, towards this system, towards overthrowing this system and uprooting it and establishing a radically different system so that we can build a world where never again do women know what it's like to be harassed walking down the street, beaten in their homes, degraded in the culture, raped in their dorms, discriminated against in the workplace, and where we don't live in a world where children labor in sweatshops to make our clothes and our cell phones, where the planet is not being burnt up and dried out and flooded, and where all of humanity has the ability to live and flourish collectively and cooperatively. That is possible through revolution, and that is a beautiful and righteous thing to struggle with women to direct their fury towards, and that is what humanity needs.
Yeah, I really appreciate this. And again, we're going to be going at this in many different ways on this show and out in the world in the coming weeks. Today, as part of launching this effort and really bringing alive even more fully just how harmful this woke identity politics is, how much it takes you away from reality and stands as a major obstacle to the struggle we need to be waging to seize this time, to make a revolution and get all of humanity free, we wanted to play an excerpt from the interview with Bob Avakian last fall, where he addresses this question directly. We'll play the first part of his answer now, which goes into some key dimensions of this woke framework, which are very much related to everything we've been talking about. And we'll show the second part in upcoming shows. So let's watch and make sure to comment with your thoughts.
I want to ask about what you've called woke lunacy. And you've written in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating that woke is becoming a joke, a bad joke. And I think we see expressions of this all the time. Almost any time somebody speaks out against injustice or makes a piece of artwork dealing with other cultures or even exposing injustice, especially if they have some privilege, somebody comes out and calls them out. And quite often a woke mob comes and attacks them, says, who are you to do this? You're appropriating. You've got to stay in your lane, all of this nonsense. But this phenomenon of woke.
Yeah, well, I think, look, it's good to be awake and not asleep, but that's the first thing we can say. But this woke thing has turned into a joke and a bad joke, and the whole identity politics that's bound up with it. Let's start with the basics. We talk about epistemology, which means your theory of knowledge, or you just more simply, your approach to understanding the world. This identity politics and the wokeness that goes along with it is not only unscientific, it's an anti-scientific epistemology. It's an anti-scientific approach to understanding the world, the relations among people, what causes these relations, etc., and so on. Because it basically, is based on the notion that there isn't one objective reality that's the same for everybody. Yes, that objective reality may affect different people differently, but it's the same objective reality. The storm, the hurricane in Florida is a hurricane in Florida for everybody who lives there. It's not a hurricane, that for people who believe in hurricanes, and not a non-hurricane for people who don't believe in hurricanes. So objective reality is objective reality. The earth is round, not flat. That's true for everybody. Kyrie Irving, I don't care who. The earth is round, not flat. That's true for everybody. The earth goes around the sun. That's different than the appearance. It appears that it's the other way around, that the sun is, the sun rises and the sun sets. But that has to do with the position of the earth in relation to the sun. And the earth is going around the sun, not the other way around. That's true for everybody. I don't care, if you like to believe that you are actually controlling the motion of the sun because you are sitting on the earth in a powerful position to determine the motion of the sun. Bullshit. The sun exists independently of you, objectively. That's the same reality. But this identity politics wokeness says there's different reality for different identities and different people. And you hear it all the time, your truth, our truth. There's not different truths. Truth, let's get this clear. Truth simply means an accurate reflection of reality. It means that what's being said about something corresponds to the actual reality. Like I just said, it's true that the earth is round, not flat. Okay, that's a truth. There's not different truths for different identities. So right away, epistemologically, in terms of its anti-scientific approach, this identity politics wokeness is wrong, and it's bound to do harm, because when you're not only unscientific but you're anti-scientific, when you hear some of these wokesters will even say things like, "Oh, objective reality, that's a white male supremacist construct. There is no objective reality." That is obviously harmful, because if you don't even know that there's objective reality, or you deny that there's objective reality, then how can you actually understand objective reality and go about changing it in the way it needs to be changed? You can't. You're only going to be misled. And this does a great deal of harm just on that level. And it confuses a lot of people, And then there's the whole thing that flows out of that. Why? What goes along with denying objective reality and saying that there's not truth, but just different truths for different identities? I mean, yes, look, let's examine it. For people who are oppressed, but by the way, I use the word oppressed deliberately, not marginalized, because let's examine these terms. Things are understood best in terms of their opposites. Mm-hmm. Understand up by what's down, right? Understand cold by what's hot, so on and so forth. What's the opposite of marginalized? It means being not marginalized. It means being in the mainstream. It means being included in the society as it is. If you're talking about marginalization, then that's the logical remedy, quote unquote. But if you're talking about oppression, it's not just our narrative versus their narrative. It's actual oppression, people being held down, forcibly held down, being violently suppressed. That's oppression. It means pushing down on people, keeping them down. If you're oppressed, the answer to it is to end the oppression. And then you go looking for what's the source of the oppression, what is it rooted in, and how do we uproot it? Because if you want to uproot something, you have to know what it's rooted in. And it's rooted in this system, all these different forms of oppression. So marginalized, right there, you see something's wrong. Now, this does a lot of harm, because then if you say there's different realities for different people, and you say some people are marginalized, then those people who've been left out, who've been pushed to the margins or kept in the margins, it should be their turn now. The whole point, Lenin once said, anybody who makes a revolution with the outlook, you had your turn, now it's my chance to have a go. Anybody who does that does it with the outlook of the petty bourgeoisie, the middle class. And that is not an outlook that can lead a revolution. The middle class precisely in between. It's caught in between these two contending classes, the proletariat, the masses of oppressed people, and the oppressors, the ruling class. And so it wants to try to carve out a position for itself in between and try to hold off these two different opposing, fundamentally opposing forces. But it can't do it. And so its positions are always, ill-founded. They always are out of keeping with reality. But this is the way these people want to talk about it. Now, if you are trying to actually fight against oppression and you run up against all this identity politics wokeness, then what happens? Well, the marginalized, they haven't been allowed to have their right to speak, and their right to get somewhere, so they have to be in the front of everything. Doesn't matter where it's going, as long as they're in the front of it. And, it's not going toward ending their actually oppressed condition. It's just, at most, striving for a better position within the system as it exists with all of its horrific oppression, and yes, resting parasitically, living off of billions of people in the world as a whole.
Today I'm joined by Annie Day and Atlas Winfrey, who are Revcoms here in Los Angeles, working on mobilizing opposition to the inter-imperialist war, the inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine between the United States and Russia, and also against the ratcheting up, the heating up, and the increasingly dangerous military confrontation between imperialist USA and the now imperialist China. And we're going to get into why this situation calls for action now. And then we'll get into why the existential stakes of this inter-imperialist war requires and calls forth the necessity and the potential for getting organized now for an actual revolution to overthrow the system that is putting humanity at such risk. And so with that, I want to welcome Annie Day and Atlas Winfrey of the Revcoms to Studio B of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show.
Very glad to be here.
Thanks, Andy.
All right. Well, we lost our electricity for the day, but we didn't lose our power, at least not the power of ideas and our call. And to set the stage, Annie and Atlas, for our discussion and the need to act now, I want to start with the interview that Sunsara and I did from the RNL show of Bob Avakian this past fall, where I posed to him the question about what's behind and what's really at stake with this war in Ukraine.
Well, I think the most essential thing is this is contention among different imperialist powers. The U.S. has been the dominant power in the world, and Russia went through the whole thing where the Soviet Union imploded. It hadn't been socialist for a long time, but it had been pretending to be socialist, and then eventually gave that up, and the Soviet Union went out of existence. And Russia became very weak. You know, they had that guy Yeltsin in there who could hardly stay sober for a day, you know, as a head of state, you know, and Russia became basically just, you know, a very subordinate to the U.S. and to the whole, you know, quote unquote, Western alliance. And ever since Putin came in, his whole program has been to reassert, you know, Russian, first of all, you know, Russian integrity, but also just Russian influence in the world, you know, as an imperialist power, which is what it is. It's a openly capitalist and imperialist power, and it's, you know, trying to break out of the subordinate position that it's been in particularly since the disintegration of the Soviet Union. And so this explains what he's been doing. You know, he went into Georgia a number of years back, you know, and now into Ukraine. And, you know, I think we could speculate, but I think Putin made some miscalculations. That I think he felt that the U.S. and its Western imperialist alliance would make a lot of noise. Maybe they'd do some economic sanctions, but I don't really think that he understood that they would really throw as much into this as they have this is basically a war being fought by the U.S. with Ukrainian soldiers against Russian imperialism. And, you know, all the intelligence, increasingly the planning, the heavy armament, the most up-to-date weapons, this is all U.S., you know, and it's just the Ukrainians are the foot soldiers and the cannon fodder for this on that side of it. The U.S. has openly declared that its intention is to administer a defeat to Russia in order to weaken its overall challenge to U.S. imperialism. So, you know, that's why they've thrown everything they have into it. You know, just to go back for a second, I think Putin also miscalculated, thinking that he could send in the sort of lightly armed troops and quickly take over the country. And he probably preferred to do that from the point of view of, like, then you have more of a country, you know, that's intact rather than one that's devastated. And that was a miscalculation because already, you know, not only were the Ukrainians putting up a resistance, but the U.S. was already throwing a lot in to help them. So the U.S. has openly declared that its goal is to administer a defeat to Russia. And on the other side, you know, Putin is very clear he's not going to accept a defeat. For the same kind of logic. It's imperialist gangster logic. Neither side can afford to suffer a defeat. So what do you get then? Well, Putin talks about, okay, now this territory that you're referring to that they've annexed through these ridiculous referenda. You know, by the way, just speaking of ridiculous referenda, I have to say this. Once again, world-class hypocrisy from the U.S. imperialists. You know, they went into Iraq, you know, occupied the country illegally. You know, it was a violation of international law, you know, just a, you know, blatant international war crime. They went into Iraq, got rid of the existing government, put in a puppet government, and then held elections while their troops are occupying the country. But that was a free and fair election, don't you know? But now when Putin does the same thing in these sections of Ukraine, that he's annexed, this is a sham. This is, everybody has to denounce this. I mean, can't you see what how ridiculous this is? This is anything but a free and fair election, unlike the ones we had in Iraq when we were occupying. Of course, they don't really say that, but that's the reality of it, right? So, Putin has annexed these sections of the Ukraine, and he has made a statement that any threat to the integrity, of Russia or to the territory of Russia, any threat, he will use all weapons available, which means, and he repeated it twice and said this is not a bluff, it means that puts nuclear weapons on the table. Even if you're talking about tactical nuclear weapons, these have tremendous devastating effect. Let's not pretend they're some minor thing, just tactical. They have tremendous devastating effect. So he's taken that stand. Now the U.S. is saying, well, if Putin does that, then we'll, I've seen some military analysts on the U.S. side, we'll go in and destroy all of his forces in Ukraine, knock out his fleet, and so on and so forth. And then what do you think Putin would do? They're saying, we won't go nuclear. Even if Putin goes nuclear, we won't go nuclear. We'll just destroy all of his troops and his fleet, devastate his fleet. So what is Putin going to do in a situation like that? This is what I point out in this article. You get on this very deadly trajectory of escalation where neither side can accept a defeat, and pretty soon you're at the threshold of strategic nuclear weapons that could do devastation to the entire world and, vast numbers, if not humanity as a whole.
So that was Bob Avakian on the RNL show last fall. The situation has only intensified along the trajectory that he describes. So Annie and Atlas, what is the situation now? Has this continued? And then why and what are we doing about it?
Well, the situation is getting to an alarming proportion. Exactly the dynamic that he's describing there about an increasing involvement of the United States and NATO in the proxy war in Ukraine. It started off with an invasion of Ukraine by Russia, but quickly after and ever since, there's been a ratcheting up within this war. The U.S. sending first Patriot missiles, then sending regular shipments of artillery, sending advanced missile systems, sending tanks, giving intelligence, giving strategic direction, training the troops directly. And it just keeps going on this ratcheting up the involvement of the United States and NATO. And what this risks is a direct confrontation between the U.S. and NATO and Russia. And just to be specific, in the news is this downing of a U.S. drone. And there's accusations going back and forth. We don't know exactly what's happened here, but this is exactly an example. You've got a drone that's a part of the intelligence that the United States are putting drones out there as part of trying to provide the intelligence that the Ukrainians need to be able to fight the Russians. And here you have this downing of this drone. This is exactly the kind of thing that could lead to an all-out war. And that's why we think it's particularly important now for masses of people to get out on April 2nd to manifest for this first of the slogans, no U.S.-NATO war with Russia.
Yeah, and I think that's going on at the same time as you have the intensifying threats against China, where you have the U.S. sending nuclear submarines to Australia. They're sending more troops inside of Indonesia, and there's a deadly dance going on between the U.S. and China in the South China Sea. And you have both extreme strategic necessity on the part of these imperialists facing off in a way that, whether by design or by accident, could lead to a direct confrontation. And at the same time as the millions of people in this country are sleepwalking. So part of what we are aiming to do on April 2nd is to actually sound the alarm about the danger. No U.S.-NATO war with Russia. Stop U.S. threats against China. No World War III.
So how do people get involved in this?
Well, a lot of ways. I mean, the first question I guess I'd like to say is, I think part of the challenge that we have to pose to people is the and that we're passing out a flyer that's building for this, that has this direct challenge. These people are willing to risk nuclear war and the possible end to human civilization in order to maintain the bloody U.S. empire and its position as number one oppressor in the world. And are you willing to go along with that? Are you willing to risk the future of humanity for that? Are you willing to give your allegiance, your acquiescence to the U.S. to be able to maintain its position as number one oppressor in the world? And we have to pose a challenge to people. So one way people can be part of this is join with us in posing this challenge.
Annie, everything you just put forward on what's on that flyer is so important in terms of the content of it, the stakes of what we face, and what it's all about. And there's other views that are out there that actually lead people away from what the actual nature of this war is and what needs to be done. This coming weekend, there are demonstrations called against U.S. war moves, initially by the International Action Center. They call for ending all U.S. wars, but all of their publicity focuses on their opportunist, misleading demand to fund the people's needs, not the war. And then they tailor the people's needs to different constituencies. But this has taken some absurd dimensions in their sister organizations, Answer and the Party for Liberation and Socialism, who put forward a slogan, "Fight inflation, stop the war." And this is, I was thinking, perhaps something that Trump and DeSantis might actually want to get behind as part of their isolationist Make America Great Again slogan or stand. So Annie and Atlas, what's the problem with building opposition to the war with fund the people's needs?
I mean, one thing you have to say is hundreds of thousands of people have died. Millions are displaced, refugees, and millions and millions and millions of people could die. And you're worried about not having your needs met? I mean, the amount of narrow, parasitic American chauvinism is grotesque.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I mean, it comes back to where is all this wealth that we're sitting on top of in this country that they're demanding be redistributed to American people come from? It comes from the blood and the sweat and the tears and the bones of people all over the world. And that is not what we need. We don't need a bigger share of the pie. We need a society without this. We need a revolution to get rid of what's actually at the root of what's driving these wars and driving all the other oppression that people hate.
And I think this brings us to the last two slogans of what we're fighting to manifest people around on April 2nd. It is this system, not humanity, that needs to go extinct. We don't accept their future. It's time to get organized for real revolution. And that is such a fundamental contrast to this American chauvinism, which is being whipped up by the warmongers, but also by these people who are, fighting to lead people against the war on the wrong basis. And I think it's even more criminal and harmful at the very moment where we actually could make a revolution, where that revolution is not just more urgent, but more possible.
Well, I think you both made some important points on this. Look, this is a tired-ass, deadly trajectory that they're trying to mislead people on. Get more of the goodies, as Atlas was bringing out. Get more of the goodies that comes from the sweat and blood of the people around the world, and that's the way to get people in there to oppose the war. But what happens if there's an actual war? People are going to line up behind that system that you just brought out, but also B, they're going to line up behind their own ruling class, and this ruling class can be overthrown in this particular moment that we're in with such a sharp divide in society. And what's more, this revolution could bring about a world free of all this, including free of these kinds of wars. We've talked about this on previous episodes of the Revolution Nothing Less show about how we will deal with the border, how we will deal with wars, how we will deal with nuclear weapons when we, the masses of people, control society through a new socialist republic, guided by the Constitution for a new socialist republic in North America, written by Bob Avakian. So with that, I want to encourage people to write us at the Revcoms at gmail.com and get involved with the revolution clubs and the people organizing these demonstrations on April 2nd in your different cities.
Yeah, and I want to just tell people in terms of how to get involved concretely. There's three things I would say. One, come with us this Saturday to these protests. We're going to go out to these answer demonstrations with this challenge, with our slogans, and calling on and challenging that American chauvinism and calling on people to act not in the interests of America, not thinking like Americans, but in the interests of humanity. That's number one. Number two, on April 2nd, we need to manifest with creative, defiant, militant, ideologically hard-hitting protests that actually plant a different pole in the world. How to do that? What are your ideas? Do you want to organize one of these in your cities? Write us. Join us and write us. And then three, watch this show, because people do not understand what is happening. This show needs to be watched, it needs to be spread, and it needs to be funded.
All right. So thank you, Atlas, as part of the RNL, Revolution Nothing Less crew, and Annie Day.
Thank you so much.
All this ridiculous stuff, people sticking their heads down or, I stay in my own lane. You think if there's a nuclear war, it won't touch your lane? I mean, come on, let's get fucking serious around here. You think if U.S. and China go to war, your lane is going to be somehow, I'm just going along in my lane. I mean, people need to wake up and get serious. This is a contest between oppressors, the world's leading oppressors, with the U.S. number one. Yes, USA number one oppressor and plunderer in the entire world for decades. And, it's up to us to oppose our own ruling class. Yes, we also oppose Russian imperialism. Yes, we also oppose Chinese imperialism. But we're not living in Russia, and we're not living in China. And if we were living in Russia and China, our primary focus would be on opposing our ruling class where we were. We live in the United States. All these crimes committed by these imperialists are done in our name. Supposedly, the army goes out there to protect our freedoms and blah, blah, blah. They go out there to plunder people so that U.S. imperialism can suck the blood of literally billions of people. And if you think I'm exaggerating, go on the website, revcom.us, and read the articles by Raymond Latta, which get into the parasitism of U.S. imperialism, how it is an international exploiter and super exploiter of people in the global south or the third world, the poorer countries of the world, and what this has to do with what the U.S. looks like internally and how it thrives. Even the consumer goods that people, have are cheapened, more affordable to the massive population here because of the way that people are viciously exploited. More than 150 million children in the third world who have no childhood. Hundreds of millions of women, like those in Bangladesh working in factories, making the stuff that goes to Walmart or whatever. People all over the world in similar situations. It is our responsibility to oppose this primarily, while we also oppose these other imperialists. This is where we live. This is being done, and all these massive crimes, and now the threat of existential threat of nuclear war. A threat to that's what existential means, threat to the existence of humanity. All that's being done in our name. And idiots like, Steve Van Sant aside, now I'm giving him a break by saying idiocy. We have a responsibility to first and foremost oppose our own imperialist ruling class and what it's doing. And more generally, I've made a statement and I'll make it again. The masses of people in the world, and this is very acutely and urgently posed now, the masses of people in the world cannot any longer afford. It was always terrible that these are the people ruling the world, but it's now acutely posed. We can no longer afford to allow these imperialists to dominate the world and to determine the destiny of humanity. They need to be overthrown as quickly as possible.
All right, Andy, glad to have you back in Studio A. We got the power back on.
We do, and I managed to get my hat back on with all the trying to suss out how we lost power. I never put my hat back on for that.
See, I think we lost power because you took your hat off.
I think that's probably true. But yeah, it does give me at least some brain power. All right, so One more thing in today's show.
Yeah, so as promised, we are going to bring you footage of the International Day celebration and march and gathering hosted and organized by the Revcoms here in Los Angeles. This was a beautiful, really uplifting revolutionary day down at Venice Beach. It's a place where people from all over the city gather, a real cross-section of people, and a lot of people were out that day. And one of the things that was at the heart of this celebration, and you'll see it in the footage, was a revolutionary dance, Break the Chains, that was a way of involving people. And throughout the day, this was performed several times. It was started with maybe under a dozen. And by the time it was performed at the end, it was 3 times that many. People had been drawn in, and it had a real uplifting and revolutionary impact on the crowd.
Yeah, Sunsara, I had a chance to go on the whole march and then to the celebration afterwards. And, it was very fun. It was very cold. It was cold for LA. I know people in the Northeast, it's not very cold here, but it was cold for LA. But people, you can see people had their T-shirts on because there was such a good feeling in that. And one of the things that was extraordinary in the sense of being different, but extraordinary in terms of really indicating some potential, is that it was a very revolutionary feeling. The slogans were revolutionary. Break the chains, unleash the fear of women as a mighty force for revolution. Targeted capitalism and patriarchy, and it called on people to get organized for revolution. All of this was combined with really big arms, and you just saw people gathering around that, and I had a certain sense that some of what's happened to women in this country, and as well as around the world, but in this country with the loss of abortion, was really, that anger is still there, and it can be tapped when you have the kind of agitation that we did that day. And then afterwards, it was, we showed in a bar, with all the hubbub of a bar, we showed this film clip from our interviews of Bob Avakian on the question of, you can't eliminate, you can't say you're against all oppression, except for one, the oppression of women. And people were just listening. People who weren't even part of our thing stopped and were checking out what he said. And people were talking back to the screen and snapping their fingers. It was really, really quite a good day. And still modest, but we're people are getting their sea legs now, and to really get going on building a movement for an actual revolution, which I think the whole show that we've done today, brought that forward for people. So why don't we just go and watch this?
Well, one other thing, that I wanted to note, and you mentioned it briefly, but this is International Women's Day. So it was part of standing with and joining with women all over the world rising up. And there were very powerful manifestations of women for International Women's Day in Mexico, in Afghanistan, incredibly courageous in Iran, and all over Europe, all over Africa, all over Latin America. This really was in Asia, South Asia. So what you see here is in Venice, but it's part of something that really is for the liberation of women all over the planet. So let's watch.
Happy International Women's Day, everyone. Our march and rally today, today is not International Women's Day, but we are here on the occasion of International Women's Day 2023. So welcome everybody. We're gonna march through Venice. We're gonna bring this message and our slogans today, which are break all the chains, unleash the fury of women as a mighty force for revolution. And then that's right, a really special dance, battle cry to break all the chains that you're gonna see today, that you can learn together with us, that we're gonna perform and bring to people on this boardwalk and all over Venice where we're gonna be going today. Me caiga con fuerza el feminicida. Because they took away your right to abortion and forced your sisters across the country to have children against their will, and because they are coming for birth control next. Because your young sisters still cut themselves, still think about suicide, still get bullied in the halls and shamed on social media, and yes, raped when they dare to trust.
Because if you are trans and young, you are hounded by bullies and by those in power in Texas, in Florida, and America, and you are still stigmatized for being lesbian or gay in 2023.
Because we don't have to live in a world where women and girls are beaten and brutalized and degraded and demeaned and hated and shamed. This world where women and girls are pimped and tricked and sold into sexual exploitation on an industrial level, where LGBT people are demonized, despised, and terrorized, where women and girls are forced to become mothers against their will with no choice, no matter their conditions, no matter their hopes or their dreams. And we live this way now, not because of human nature, not because of the nature of men. We live this way because of a system of capitalism, imperialism. And it has the heavy chains of hundreds and thousands of years of patriarchal oppression woven into its every fiber. And it is this system that has to be swept away, pulled up by the roots and overthrown through an actual revolution.
Holy revolution! Holy revolution! Can't get women free!
Break all the chains! Unleash the fury of women as a mighty force for revolution! And we're calling on everybody who is infuriated.
What do you think about this? International Women's Day! International Women's Day! Come on, people!
Right fucking now. There's a fascist judge in Texas about to take away your right to access medication abortion services. And don't think for a fucking second you're safe because you're in California. That's right. So I urge you, take a look inside yourself and ask, how much worse am I willing to let this get? So join us. Take up space. Help us break all the chains and join us when we demand abortion on demand and without apology.
We demand of the Islamic Republic of Iran, free all political prisoners now. We say to the U.S. government, no threats or war moves against Iran. Lift all U.S. sanctions.
Zan, Zendegi, Azadi. Women, life, freedom.
I just found it really inspirational, and I think it's amazing that people can come together and just speak their mind and say what they really believe.
So now is the time to get with this revolution. It's time to stop looking up to the Cardi B's, the Ice Spices, and the fucking Beyoncés, telling you that your power lies in your ability to sell yourself, mimicking the misogyny of bitch this and bitch that, and treating other people like dogs in this dog-eat-dog system. It's time to stop following the politicians and the CEOs that tell you that all we have to do is break the glass ceiling. Get more girl bosses atop an empire that depends on sucking the life out of women all over this world. It's time to stop swallowing your anger, turning it inwards. Stop cutting yourself. Stop starving yourself. Stop reshaping your body parts to make a more valuable commodity or hating yourself when you can't. It is time to raise your sights beyond yourself.
Attention, bitch! That's right! Yeah. That's right! You better know! That's right! I'm not your bitch, I'm not your hoe! You better know!
Revolution, nothing less. How do we get out of this mess? How do we get out of this mess? Revolution, nothing less. Revolution, nothing less. Say, how do we get out of this mess? How do we get out of this mess? Revolution, nothing less. Revolution, nothing less.
They want us to stay silent, obedient, acquiescent, and sad. They do not want us to feel our power. They do not want us to feel our anger, our hope for a different world, or our fury. So now is the time to join this revolution. For every
everyone who hungers for a better world, who wants to see an end to the long night in which humanity has been divided into masters and slaves, who wants to see the dawning of the new day. I want you to say it with me. Break the chains. Unleash the fury of women. As a mighty force. For revolution.
Every 10 seconds, a woman is beaten. Assaulted. Raped. Stop. Rise. Rise. Rise up and break the chain. Women pull up half the sky, move mountains, and change the tide. Rise. Rise. Rise up and join the fight. We do not tolerate your whole damn system is depraved. I'm not your servant, not your slave, not your breeder, not your maid. Now's the time to break the chain, free the bird and burn the cage. Waves of greed, take the stage. Unleash your fury, unleash your rage. We do not tolerate your whole damn system is depraved. I'm not your servant, not your slave, not your breeder, not your maid. Imagine no patriarchy, imagine no male supremacy. How do we get there? Revolution! How do we get there? Nothing less! How do we get there? Revolution! How do we get there? Nothing less!
Oh man, just like all the women, especially. Of course, I'm here to support the women, chanting and singing and dancing. I couldn't help but join the dance because it's so powerful, it's so beautiful to see and be a part of, and to witness the smiling faces on the crowds, on the streets and sidewalks watching. So it's a whole lot of fun, man. I highly recommend coming out to the next one.
All right, Sunsara, so that brings us to the end of the 139th episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, and we've gone a while. So today I just want to bring to a close saying that we promised the Patreons that we would do a Zoom, which I will do. Maybe you'll join me, but I'm definitely going to be doing it at 1 o'clock Pacific time on Sunday for an hour. And so for those of you who are not yet patrons, who would like to come on that Zoom, you still got 2 days to become a Patreon. And that's not the only reason you should become a patron. You should become a patron because it's becoming part of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less community. It's working with us on those questions, and it's getting into and getting out in the world with putting revolution in this country on the map for the emancipation of all humanity.
And that Zoom will be a chance to interact live with other Patreons, with Andy, to ask questions, and maybe some other members of the Revolution Nothing Less crew as well. And we look forward to learning from what you have to say in that process. I also want to, before we close the show, note and give an alert to our viewers that we are awaiting a decision from a fascist judge down in Texas over whether he is going to pull the approval for mifepristone, a medication that's used in 60% of abortions in this country. It would be completely illegitimate, outrageous, and a decision is expected any day. So be checking revcom.us, and also riseupforabortionrights.org is going to be hosting an emergency Zoom, probably on Sunday, to help people understand what's going on here. So stay tuned to both those websites, and we'll be on top of this here as well.
Excellent. So that wraps up this show. Now, we had to start an hour later due to the power shortage here this week, but next week we'll be back on Thursday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Mountain time, 7 p.m. Central time. And 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you're in Europe or in Asia, you'll have to figure out your own time zone for that. But watch us. It's up all week, and go back and watch the last few episodes. There's really been a lot of unique and important and revolutionary content there. So with that, I want to say goodnight on behalf of the crew, and goodnight to you, Sunsara.
All right, good night.